I couldn't decide if this was a good idea for a video to make just because of how dark and disturbing it is, but earlier today I saw a thread on Twitter going around listing the most evil artists and musicians of all time, and absent from the list was by far the most evil singer to ever hit the mainstream, Ian Watkins. And I was just shocked that not a lot of people seem to know about this. This was a story I followed as it unfolded back in 2012 because Ian Watkins was the frontman to my favorite band when I was a kid. Lost Prophets. In fact, if there's any archaeologists watching this and want to unearth some unholy relics, if you're able to find any re-uploads of my old Gears of War montages from 2007 and 2008, you'll hear Lost Prophets music that they're set to and edited in sync with. I used their music all the time in videos growing up because I was such a massive fan, so you can imagine how fucking disgusted I was when I learned the truth behind their singer. Ian Watkins' crimes are some of the most depraved I've ever read about, and in fact, the senior investigator said it was the most disturbing child abuse evidence he had seen in nearly 30 years on the force. And it's not an exaggeration. Ian Watkins was a serial child sexual abuser and even convinced some of his fans that were mothers to give up their kids to him to abuse, and would even convince the mothers to abuse their own children on video calls that he'd masturbate to. His sex crimes spanned years and even included the sexual abuse of a 10-month-old baby and attempted rape of a baby. Not only were his crimes some of the worst you could possibly imagine, but he was blatantly open about them as well. He'd even brag about fucking kids to some of his ex-girlfriends at the time. I feel like if the police officers had just asked him, "Hey, are you having sex with minors?" he would have hit them with a "hell yeah, brother," and then went up for a high five. The whole story of Ian Watkins and his arrest is also the story of terrible police work from the department. There were years of reports and people desperately trying to get him behind bars, and they just wouldn't look at the evidence. They refused to look at all of the overwhelming evidence that was constantly being provided to them. The reason he ended up getting arrested was on unrelated drug charges, and they just happened to find this absolute fucking mountain, like a goddamn Mordor. They wandered in there and happened to find all of this child abuse evidence, but they were there for drug reasons and continued to turn the other cheek and ignore all of the reports coming from victims or people that had already compiled evidence and submitted it to them. Now, like I said, he wasn't very secretive with what he was doing. He wasn't exactly like some kind of cunning, sly, criminal mastermind. He was very open with the fact that he was a pedophile. Just look at this excerpt here. Look at one of the passwords he'd use for his computer. Ian Watkins is a sick psychopath who's currently serving 35 years in jail, which isn't nearly enough for his crimes. And he's not remorseful about it either. Like, just read this quote here, where he said he did it for the mega lols, talking about abusing and raping kids. So anyway, after reading that Twitter thread about evil artists and musicians, I really think it's worth talking about this guy and his history, since it seems it flew under the radar for a lot of people. So I'm just going to give a brief summary of everything Ian Watkins and Lost Prophets related. As I mentioned at the beginning, they were my favorite band when I was a kid. Before I even got into rock and metal, like with the other mainstream bands, I was listening to Lost Prophets. You know, this is way back in the day, but there was something called Pixo, which allowed you to make your own websites easily. And when I was in 4th grade, I made my own Pixo website called coldflames.pixo.com. Don't even bother searching for it. It's dead and buried 6 feet under, went straight to hell. Not even on archive.org. But on my Pixo website, the very first thing that would happen when you went there is the music video for Lost Prophets' Rooftop song would play. That's right, I was like an early adopter of the K-pop stan culture where they just spam music videos everywhere to farm views for them. That's what I did for Lost Prophets on my website. So their music video for Rooftops would play, and then if you went to any of the other links on the side, a different Lost Prophets music video would play. I don't remember everything I posted on that website. I know a lot of it was RuneScape related, like giving updates on my character. But when I was giving updates, you would always be having a Lost Prophets music video play, like Shinobi vs. Dragon Ninja or something like that. But yeah, all that to say, I was big into the band, so this shit hurt a lot learning about this. I've always had that mentality of you need to separate art from artist when it comes to things, but I've been unable to do that for this band. They were my favorite band when I was a young kid. I can't listen to them anymore after learning everything about Ian Watkins. It's impossible for me. I can't separate the art from the artist, especially considering Ian Watkins in one of their music videos even subtly hints at his crimes. In the music video for A Town Called Hypocrisy, Ian says at the end, "Hi kids, welcome to Town Time. We have an amazing show for you. You're going to learn all kinds of important lessons." And in hindsight, it's pretty clear what he was like saying here, knowing his history and what was actually going on behind the scenes. And it's so fucked up. Now let's get into the actual timeline as well as history of Ian Watkins and the band. I'm not going to be showing much footage at all here. I'm mainly just going to be telling the story. It just doesn't really sit right with me to show anything from them. Knowing what we know now about Ian Watkins, it just feels fucking weird and yucky. However, there is a great breakdown of this whole situation from a channel called Gamers Inked, and they do show footage from the band as well as interviews of Ian Watkins, and they do a great job with it, so I recommend checking that out if you're interested in seeing more from the group as well as Ian and who he was as a person. But for me, I'm not going to be showing any of it, so let's get into it. Ian Watkins was the stepson of a Baptist minister and was an honor roll student. He basically fucking straight A'd his whole career as a student, graduated with honors from the University of Wales, and then in 1997 formed the Lost Prophets. They saw moderate success with their first album called The Fake Sound of Progress, but it was in 2004 with their follow-up album, Start Something, that they really broke into the mainstream spotlight. They sold 2.5 million copies and were propelled into stardom. They had their music videos on MTV. They even had Last Train Home on the soundtrack to NFL Street, which was a great game. NFL Street had a fucking wild soundtrack, but yeah, they were there. They were everywhere. Montages, back when Halo 2 montages were just starting to get their feet, Lost Prophets really took it by storm. They were a mainstream success, pretty much overnight with Start Something. With all the success came a lot of fans, many of which were underage girls that Ian Watkins would invite backstage after gigs. And from a couple of sources I've read, there were even rumors circulating around this time from media outlets that noted that there were minors backstage at these concerts around Ian Watkins, which made them uncomfortable, but they didn't really report on it or do anything on it, so I think that's a big fucking blunder from them. That is absolutely something that I think they should have raised an eyebrow with and looked into a bit deeper, but regardless. 2004, they had Start Something, they were blowing up. Ian Watkins was already abusing his status and starting to bring underage girls backstage. Then around 2008, he started getting addicted to hard drugs like crystal meth and cocaine. There was even a Music Insider that revealed more information to the depravity that was happening behind the scenes. They really blew the lid off the case of what was exactly going on back there. One of Ian Watkins' exes gave an extremely in-depth explanation for all of the awful shit that he was doing and interested in, from child pornography to bestiality to him believing he was invincible and untouchable. Her name is Joanne, and she spent years gathering evidence against Ian Watkins in order to get the authorities to take him in, investigate, and arrest him, but was ignored at every possible turn. I think Gamers Inked video does the best concise breakdown of the timeline here, so I'm just going to play a short clip from it before getting a little more in depth.
But did find it strange that there were so many young girls around the band that often. Joanne began receiving disturbing text messages from Watkins in 2008, following an incident in a video discovered by the police, in which the two are having sex, and Watkins is heard to tell Joanne that he can't wait to get you pregnant so they would have a child to abuse. Joanne then received a text message from Watkins in 2008, in which he bragged to Joanne that he had sex with multiple underage girls. Joanne, disgusted by this, went to the police immediately that same day, but unfortunately this would be the first of many instances in which Joanne was ignored.
It is worth noting that she did also say some horrible things to Ian. However, her side of the story is she was trying to gather as much evidence against him as possible to submit to the authorities to trap him and bring him to justice. So I think that's worth bringing up. She went to the police multiple times with her phone and laptop and asked them to look into it. Here's all the evidence, now please use it. And they never did. I don't know what their excuse was for not investigating further. Maybe because she was a sex worker for a time, so they didn't take her seriously, but they just wrote her off as an angry ex. Ian Watkins would regularly brag to her about having sex with kids. He would even send her images of actual, sexual abuse of children, and they just never took it seriously. At least, not until Ian Watkins was actually arrested, and then they launched a massive investigation and arrested Joanne for possession of those images that Ian sent her. So she got arrested for the possession of the evidence she was gathering for the authorities, who just weren't doing their job here. She was eventually cleared of these charges, but still, just an awful situation all around. He could have been stopped much, much earlier if the authorities had bothered to look into it even slightly. Because, like I said, he wasn't really hiding anything. There were a lot of rumors dating as far back to 2004 about some of the awful shit he was doing. Like, they could have just done the bare minimum and gotten this guy way before 2012. In that time, how many more victims were there, you have to wonder. It also wasn't just Joanne that was submitting all of this evidence or making all of these claims against Ian Watkins. There were a lot of different people that came forward. For example, an Australian woman told police that Watkins was a child abuser and drug abuser. Her email even concluded saying, "Do not disregard this as it's serious." Nothing happened. There was other complaints, including intelligence reports about Watkins' drug use and sexual interest in kids that kept getting submitted to the South Wales Police Department that didn't get investigated. In March 2012, a woman even told police that Watkins may have sexually assaulted an 11-month-old boy, and then even described images that could be found on his computer if they searched. But they didn't search. Now, I'm going to look into the case just a bit, but I'm not going to go that deep because it's way too gross to talk about. It's so bad, in fact, that the judge that sentenced Ian Watkins, as well as the two mothers I mentioned at the start of the video that abused their kids for him, he said this: "Those who have appeared in these courts at the bar or on the bench over many years see and hear a large number of horrific cases. This case, however, breaks new ground. What you three did plumbed new depths of depravity." The full sentencing remarks can be found online, but I don't encourage anyone out there to read them because they will make you sick to your stomach. You will absolutely fucking puke. It'll ruin your whole day trying to read this. I'm only going to read a couple and bits and pieces of them. I can't read half of this shit. It's so fucking painful to even say. I'm only going to do a couple here, just to give you an idea of how bad this guy was. This isn't even the whole thing. So here, count 18 dates back to March 2007. You met after a Lost Prophets concert when she was a 16-year-old virgin. The prospect of taking her virginity excited you. You got her to dress in a schoolgirl's outfit and you videoed her and you having oral, vaginal, and anal sex. You asked her whether she enjoyed being your underage slut. At the end, you urinated over her face and told her to drink it. That gives you some insight into your attitude to young females at the time. Over 5 years before counts relating to count 19 dates back to August 2008. The girl was another fan, age 16. You videoed her having oral sex with you, and she is seen snorting white powder, which you told her was cocaine. This next part, I think, is going to be one of the most disturbing things you'll probably ever hear. This is in regards to the mothers, to one of them in particular. "But you were a mother. Your infant was only 10 months old. A mother naturally loves, protects, shields, nurtures, and cherishes. Your infant would have trusted you implicitly. You betrayed that trust. What did you do? You had a detailed discussion with Watkins about the sexual acts to which the two of you were going to subject your infant." That's as far as I'm going to read, because then it goes into detail about what happened with Watkins, the mother, and that baby. And there is a video of it where they are sexually abusing a 10-month-old baby, and it's described in detail in the sentencing remarks. It is horrific. And this isn't all of it. Like, these were only 3 counts that I just read to you. It goes on and on and on. I think Ian Watkins is the biggest monster to have ever existed in any capacity as a celebrity or a singer, and just one of the most depraved individuals I've ever read about. They talk about the child pornography images and videos he has with kids aged 2 to 12. It's like an endless amount of the worst things you could possibly imagine. So yeah, I think the answer to who is the most evil artist or musician of all time is Ian Watkins. There's a long list of horribly fucked up celebrities out there, and I think Ian Watkins is somewhere towards the top of that list. That's about it. So yeah.